All right, guys. Hey, what is up? Happy Tuesday. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk About It with me, your host, Jessica. I know you guys probably missed the show last week. It was spring break, but we are back now with another show for this week. And this week, I want to do something a little bit different. I want to do a little bit of a show review. I was watching this show over spring break. I pretty much binge watched it. It was a limited series on Netflix. And you know how, like, when you really, really get into a show, you just kind of can't pull yourself away from it? That has been me lately with a couple shows. I just can't seem to, like, not watch them. Like, I just, when I have some free time or I'm working on homework, I'm like, oh, I'm going to watch a show. So this show is around for a while. It is called Interview with a Vampire. I'm sure a lot of you have probably heard of it. There is a movie that was made like a while ago. I've never seen the movie, so I can't really tell you if it was accurately, based off of it or if it was similar to it, but this is going to be my kind of opinion and thoughts on this show that I watched. So, some kind of basic background stuff. It was 7 episodes, and this one was on Netflix. I have recently been told that there is a season 2 of this show, but it is not on Netflix. It is on AMC Plus. So I have not seen the second season. So this is purely going to be like me talking about the first season that I watched. I have talked with my friends and family about this show, so I'm sure if they're listening, they're probably like, "Oh, here we go again." But I thought it was a great show to start off. I would definitely give it like an 8 out of 10. And the reason I say 8 out of 10 is because, well, I did think it was really good. There were a few parts that, like, not necessarily that I wish would have been done differently, but I think they dragged and didn't really add to the story. And there was space that could have been used to tell more detail of the story. First of all, I was not exactly hooked by the first episode either. Like, I was definitely interested, but when it first started out, those first like 10 minutes or so, I was kind of like, like, I don't know if I'm gonna like this. I'm just not feeling like I'm being pulled in. There's no, opening dramatic action or dramatic event that's happening that I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm definitely gonna like get into this. I want to know what that's about and what happened. But as I kept watching, it's a very long first episode, and as I kept watching it, I was definitely interested. It really did a good job of introducing these characters and sort of providing the dynamic between the two. You definitely got the message, like, right on point with that. And kind of a side note, I am very interested in dramas anyway, especially family dramas. I think that's something that, as someone who wants to be a creative writer and who wants to write in film and, write books and things like that, I think that drama is a really interesting genre anyway because of what you can create with it. So I kind of like to watch things like this and sort of study how they kind of build these tensions and they build these dramas and these conflicts. And one of the things that I think is a big piece of drama is, like the family ones, because you have these shows where family can be your everything. Family can be your ride or die. They are behind you till the end. The whole blood is thicker than water, all that stuff. Like, that's your family. They have your back. And then there are some dramas where you have inner cliques in a family that are working against one another. For example, like the show Yellowstone, that is a great example of like a family drama, because while it's about the family and like their property, it's also about the inner workings of this family, their history, their present, and like their future. And even in that show, there's a lot of, siblings going behind people's backs and, sidestepping people, or like parents not, keeping like the kids like fully up to date with what's going on, and they're hiding things. And it's very like, very drama centered. And I think with family, like, one of the reasons I like to study that so much is because there's so many moving parts, there's so many characters, and you have to really think about how it all kind of comes together. So I have a great idea for like a family drama story that I have been working on for like, months and years. So everybody can keep to date when that's going to come out. I don't know when in the future, but you'll hear it here first, and you'll be like, oh my gosh, I listened to that episode where we talked about it. Anyways, so kind of going off of that whole family drama, family, disagreements, not seeing things the same way, or like disapproval. In this show, I think that was a really important thing that I kind of liked it in the show. I think it really added to the character. I mean, I obviously don't really like drama like that in real life, and I don't know, what I would do if my whole family was divided and I felt like I had nobody that would be terrible. So I'm very fortunate to have the close family that I do, and the parents that support me, and I get along with my sibling and all that. So But I think for this character, it really added that kind of background layer, and you could almost kind of see the foreshadowing happening, which I really liked. I think it's a really good cinematic technique in foreshadowing, because you can almost like tell us what's going to happen without actually saying it until it does happen. So I really liked that. Anyway, so characters, definitely. It was kind of like wishy-washy. Like, you focus on your main person, obviously, but you're not really sure the connections of everybody around them. So after I got past the first episode, I was like, okay, I'm kind of into this. Like, let's see what's going on. One of the things I really like too in an Interview with a Vampire, he's obviously being interviewed, which I think is really cool concept, because it's a really interesting technique to have to tell a story but jump between present and past, because somebody will say something in the present and then you have to show it in the past. And like I said, I'm a little bit of my production nerdiness that's going to come out in this episode, but it's something I'm very interested in, so I think this is a really good show for me to do. But when you kind of do that, you really have to balance between the storytelling, what you're telling people and what you're showing people, and I think voiceovers really come in play with that. And I love voiceovers. I love a good voiceover. I think it says a lot about the characters, because you're hearing them talk and you can really, like, you can match the, like, what their voice and the emotion in their voice with the emotion on their face. So I think that this show did a really good job with that too. And you could kind of see too, like, this whole idea of reflecting on your past. Like, could you imagine if somebody sat you down and was like, tell me about your life, and you're telling them this, and like, as you're telling them this, you're telling them all this stuff about your life, and you're almost re-experiencing it, you're reliving it. So you feel that same anger, you feel that same sadness, and you feel that same happiness. And like, when you're thinking about it, you're like, oh, this happened to me and it was so great, and then this happened, but like, oh my gosh, I'm still so mad about it, like, it still resonates with me. But I have this person in my life now, and I'm never going to forget them, and I love them so much. And I think that it's really interesting to do that. I personally was doing interviews with my family. I think it's really important. I think that sometimes you take things for granted, and especially when you're little, I used to think that, like, sometimes stories were boring. It's like, oh, I don't want to hear what happened when you were 25. But now I'm kind of like, no, please tell me, because I want to know about you. I want to know about your life and what happened. And for a while I was doing these interviews with my family. I was doing them with my grandmother, I was doing them with my dad, and like my mom. And I'm always really fascinated to know, because I feel like sometimes people just say things and it's just kind of like, I've never heard that before, like, what are you talking about? And then you want to learn more, which is another way that this show really pulled people in. It was, you give a piece here and a piece there, but you don't give them the full answer, and then they have to watch to find out, which is, how you get hooked into and how you end up binge watching a show like I did. But I think it's like, to watch it like that, it's like, that's so cool. And the further I get into my major and this whole production thing and exploring it, I find that I kind of like that whole documentary style of storytelling, but I really like the kind of like fictional ones more, instead of like historical. I mean, I know documentaries like are historical, but I kind of like this idea that you can play around with things and you get a personal connection to it. You get like a personal feel. And I think that, like, in this show, you really kind of saw everything through the eyes of him and how he was reflecting on it. And then you jump back to the present and you would see how he still felt about it and how, everything still affected him. And I think one of the things that's crazy too is that he's a vampire, but he like remembers all this stuff. I mean, imagine like you have been alive for over, 2 or 3 decades and you still remember everything. You remember gaining people, losing people, you remember tragedies, you remember like great joys of your life. I mean, that would be a lot. That's a lot to retain and a lot to handle, for sure. So I think that to really show that in this show, it was such a talent, for sure. Like, the lead actor, he was absolutely amazing. If he does not get an award for this role, like, I think that would be a total snubbing, just because of the performance. But kind of, keep it back to this show, I think that the cinematics of it was amazing. The graphics was really good, and it was one of those things where, like, pretty much everything that you saw was important to the story. There wasn't a whole lot of like meaningless scenes added. It all made sense. It all kind of came together, and even if it didn't make sense in that moment you were seeing it, it made sense when it was like talked about later. It all really came together very well, and I think it's a very intricate plot to do something like that. When you're talking about combining the past and the present, you have to find a way to tell the story without giving it all away or leaving out too much and jumping back and forth too much between events that happened. You have to keep it in order, but it has to make sense. So if you haven't seen this show, I would say if you like vampires, this is a really good thing for you to probably watch. It's very interesting, and it's also kind of, about yourself and your personality. It's a very meaningful message, very important, because we all go through something like that, So I would definitely recommend it. It's on Netflix. Like I said, it's only 7 episodes, very limited. If you wanted to watch the second season, it's on AMC Plus, so go watch that then. But I think that this is something I would definitely recommend for everyone to go watch if you're into that. If you're not, well then give me a show recommendation that you'd maybe like me to talk about at another time, because I'm totally open to doing those. I think it's really fun. So thank you guys so much for listening today. It has been a long day indeed, but we're almost there. We're almost to Wednesday, and that'll be halfway through the week, which is great for everyone. I hope everybody had a very nice spring break. I know I did. I really enjoyed getting to hang out with my family, because I feel like I don't see them enough now, but it's almost summertime, so I'm sure I'll be hanging out with them more than they probably will be excited to. But no, I'm just kidding. They love me so much. So thank you guys so much for listening today. Don't forget to tune in to another episode of Let's Talk About It next week on Tuesday at 2. Thank you guys so much for listening. I will see you next week. Bye.